Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, Faith Fellowship. My name's Matt. I'm going to come up here and talk for a few minutes before we kick off what we got on here. We have a very special morning. Matt Baird is going to be playing for us. Matt's going to be running the service, and he's going to be doing the worship as well. So we're very excited to have him here. Just a quick few notes on Matt. Matt is the lead singer of Spoken. He started that band in 1996, and since then he's been traveling and doing his mission, what he feels called to do, which is to spread the word through music and service. So we're just so grateful to have him here. We had him here last year. We liked him so much that we brought him back, and so we're just excited to have him to lead us this Sunday. Because we're having Matt here, we're going to do things a little bit different today. We're not going to have a break in service. So usually we do announcements, I talk, and then we do the 5-minute break. We're not going to do that today. So if you have kids that you like to drop off, please just go ahead and do that now while I'm talking, and then you can be back here for the full thing for Matt. And then I'm just going to talk for a few seconds here about like some other stuff we got going on. So if you're new to Faith Fellowship, welcome. It's awesome. It's great to see you here. We have an app here at Faith Fellowship that we use to kind of keep you in the loop, right? So if you look at the cards in front of your seat, you can go ahead and download the app. It's just a good way to get connected. It's a good way to know what's going on, right? If you looked at it last week, you would have seen that Matt's here, right? But we had like an awesome lunch picnic last week, stuff like that. You can just kind of see what's going on. You can sign up for groups. You can also give through that app. And if you prefer to give in person, though, we have some black boxes there in the back that you can give in person. And then next week, on Sunday, Mike will be leading a healing prayer service at 5:30. That'll be here at the church. It's just a good opportunity to come together to be in worship with other Christians and to focus on healing and God's amazing power. So we look forward to seeing you there. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Matt.
Thanks for letting me be here. Appreciate it. You give a light, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. You give a light, you will love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath. your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. Great are you, you unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies till all my fears are gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Love has called my name. I've been born again to your family. Your blood flows through my veins. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears were down in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and say, I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I am a child of God. Well, it's good to be here. Something that's been on my mind since I started playing this morning. Any of you ever deal with distractions in your life? So there's this. Do you hear that? That I'm just going to go ahead and be honest. You can sit down for a moment. So there's these things that throw you off of what you're supposed to be doing, your role, your job, your relationships. There's these little annoyances, these things. And that squeak was truly driving me crazy because I'm like, don't move your feet, stand there, just play. I'm like, but I feel so awkward just standing here playing. And I couldn't help but think of about a month ago, I drove from Des Moines. I live in Des Moines, Iowa. So I drove from Des Moines to Asheville, North Carolina, because I'd been told for years, like, you got to play Asheville. You got to play Asheville. I'm like, well, I've driven through there 100 times. You got to play. You got to play. So I drove there to play, and I get there, and I'm not sure if this is live streamed or recorded or whatever. So I have to be guarded on what I actually say right now. So I get there, and the promoter's name is Ryan, super cool guy. He promoted a show for Spoken and the Protest a couple months before that, and he's like, dude, I'd love to have you come do an acoustic set. I'm like, awesome, I'm coming back. And I went to Asheville, and I walk in, and you drive 16 hours straight. You're slightly frazzled, tired, out of it, loopy, whatever you would be considered. And I get out and walk in and do a quick sound check, and like, hey, we've got dinner for you. And they had already made my tray, so I kind of just had to eat what was before me. And they're sitting at the table with me as well. So you know, like, if you're a young person, I'll just say you're much like me when it comes, like, you try to push stuff out of the way, hide it in a napkin, like, you know what I mean? There was no chance of doing that. And so, like, there's a huge bowl of brown beans, which I've had. I grew up in Arkansas. My mom made brown beans a lot. But, like, I guess with brown beans, you have to have cabbage in another huge bowl, like a huge bowl of steamed or boiled cabbage, which I had never eaten that willingly, you know? And cornbread, which is great. I'm all about cornbread. And then there was this huge piece of wonderful chocolate cake with chocolate icing. I'm like, I want that, you know? And so I'm sitting there, and we're just chatting. We're talking about music. We're talking about festivals. We're talking about whatever. And I'm like, I've never had a bowl of this before. Like, I had to be straight up. I'm like, hey, this is a little shocking to me. And so I start eating it, and the great thing was it wasn't terrible, but I wasn't used to that texture. Like, the flavor was kind of different, weird. I'd only had it in, like, Chinese food, you know? Like, and I'm going back and forth between these beans and this cabbage, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm fine with it. I'm grateful for it, but this was like a common dish for them. And so I ate as much as I could, and then I had 2 pieces of chocolate cake. I'm like, all right, cool. So the show starts, and there was 2 groups of people that came that they had no idea they were coming. It was a recovery group from one city, a recovery group from another, and it consisted of a bunch of people. So this room was packed with people, and you know, just because you kind of feel something doesn't mean you say it, right? You're kind of like, deal with it. Like, get through it. It's a big deal. Like, you're going to be up there for an hour or whatever. It's kind of warm in the room because there are a lot of people. They weren't prepared. I was shocked. I'm like, what? I start playing, and like, song 2 is over, and for whatever reason, I completely switched up the last song that I would normally play. I decided to play it, like, third. I don't know why, but I'm like, okay, maybe a prompting of the Holy Spirit, or again, I was delirious. I don't know. And so I played this song, and right at the end of that song, it was like a cool moment, like a peaceful moment. And I'm like, I'm just going to dive right into talking about the grace of Jesus, because that's why I'm here, right? I start to speak. I'm like, you know, thank you so much for letting me be here. And, you know, the amazing thing about the grace of this lady in the second row stood up. It's like, could we turn the air down? I mean, wow. I'm like, there's no way this is happening, right? It's like second row right here. I mean, come on. And I didn't know what to do. Like, you talk about a distraction in a moment that you're trying to, like, capitalize on this peaceful moment that the room is actually still for the first time, you know? And I'm like, yeah, you know what? It's pretty warm. Like, that'd be really cool. Can we like turn the air, down a bit? And he's like, yeah, right? I'm like, oh man. And then I'm like, how do I shift gears here? Because I cannot do what I was hoping to do in that moment. So I went ahead and started playing a different song. I'm pretty sure I'm like, this is so awkward. I was like, highway run into the midnight sun. Right, I start playing a song completely different than what I was doing. And so this guy comes walking towards me down the center aisle dressed in all black. So I'm like, maybe production team, I don't know. And he walks right towards me up onto the stage in front of me, about a foot from me, and walks. I'm like, what is happening? Anyway, the thermostat was right here on the side of the stage. So I'm like, oh, okay, that helps. That helps a bit, with context of everything. And the problem is like, I was like, they say that the road ain't no place to start a family. They're like the Price is Right yelling at him what temperature they want it to be. I'm like, right down the line, it's been you and me, 75, no, 72. I'm like, get me out of this place, right? And I keep playing, they're just yelling out numbers and all this stuff. And so I'm like, okay, that's over with, thankfully. So I just keep playing, keep whatever. And they decide they're going to open up all the windows in this room on that side of the room instead of let the air conditioning do its job. They're opening up all these windows. I'm like, no, you're thinking, it's like, you're doing it opposite. Like, don't do that. Immediately, everybody in the room had something to fan their face with. I'm like, I don't know where they got stuff, but they're like, I'm like, I have to get out of here. I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story because it's like so unbelievable and a typical day of my life but distractions are things that they can derail us so quick, and it can be so frustrating, or you look at it as like typical, no big deal, whatever. It's a story to tell, Later on, I'll tell this story in some other state, and I'll be a little guarded on what I say so that I don't have that person contact me. So, another important detail. Normally, just an acoustic show, I'll say, anybody have any questions? That could turn bad quick, right? I'm like, anybody have any questions? And this guy raises his hand, front row, right here, sir, right where you're sitting. He raises his hand, he's like, can I sing you a song? And boy, was I curious. I'm like, yes, sir, I'd love that. And he's leaning back. He's leaning back the whole time, like one leg out, just like leaning back. Eye contact with me the whole time. And you would think a normal person would like sing a chorus, right? That's just a chorus, get the point across. First verse, chorus. Second verse, chorus. Third verse, chorus, with a smile on his face the whole time. I'd never heard the song before. And then I made the mistake when he was done. I'm like, thank you so much for singing that. He's like, you know that song? I'm like, no, I don't. He's like, well, I'm like, that's cool. Thank you so much. I let him finish what he was saying. The promoter was sitting right here, and I'm like looking at him, and he's like, he didn't know the guy. And I'm like, this is completely bonkers. And so I was very glad to be done and out of there, but it was a great night. Great bunch of people. They truly were a great bunch of people. And I actually did enjoy my cabbage. I'm not going to order it anywhere, but thanks again for letting me be here today. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. your presence, Lord. There's nothing worth more that could ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence, Lord. I've tasted and seen of the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. Your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, Lord. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. The glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. 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 You saw me first. You let me in when I was at my worst. From the moment when I heard you say my name, was the first time in so long. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. You are the voice that calms the storm inside me, castle walls that stand around me. All this time my guardian was you. You are the light that shines in every tunnel. There in the past, you'll be there tomorrow. All my life your love was breaking through. It's always been you. Always been you. My northern star. Your love will be the compass of my heart. Oh, I just wanna be right where you are, right where you are. You are the voice that calms the storm inside me, castle walls that stand around me. All this time my guardian was you. You are the light that shines in every tunnel. There in the past, you'll be there tomorrow. All my life your love was breaking through. It's always been you. Always been you. Always been you. Who stood with me in the fire? It was you, it was always you. Who pulled me out of the water? It was you, it was always you. Who carried me on their shoulders? It was you, it was always you. You are the voice that calms the storm inside me, castle walls that stand around me. All this time my guardian was you. You are the light that shines in every tunnel. There in the past, you'll be there tomorrow. All my life your love was breaking through. It's always been you. So if you want a good version of that song, it's by Phil Wickham. You can check it out. I remember when my wife first asked me if I had heard Phil Wickham's, at that time, his new song, and I was like, I'm not sure. She said it sounds like a Disney song. And so, like, I have to check it out. You can sit down. You can sit down, sorry. Because I'm a fan of really catchy songs. And so I listened to it, and I'm like, this could totally be a Disney song. And castle walls that stand around me, I'm like, yeah, it's total Frozen. I'm about it. But when it got to the point where it's like, who stood with me in the fire? Who pulled me out of the water? Who carried me on their shoulders? Like, this is one of the best songs ever written. And then you go through that whole thing of like, Jesus, why didn't you let me write it? Type thing. Just being honest, I say that to Jesus a lot. Because I would much rather play other people's songs than mine, you know? One, I can say, hey, this is a good song. Because if I didn't write it, I can say that. And then I can tell people, if you want a good version, it's by this person. And then that promotes that person, like Phil Wickham doesn't need any help from me, but I think he's a great songwriter, and I think that the gift that God has given him with communicating the gospel is incredible. I feel the same about, Brandon Lake and Maverick City and all these artists. And God throws these things into your life that you're really confused by in the beginning, but once you get past it, which however long that could take, we can always look back and we're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I'm not saying there's not 1,000 things that I'm still waiting to be able to look back and be like, oh, that makes sense. Because I really do feel like most days I live in the twilight zone where I'm like, there's no way this is real. And someone said something earlier that made me think of this, and so I'm like, okay, maybe I'm supposed to talk about this. Maybe it's something that is relatable, And that's the whole thing, is like, whoever is standing on this platform, their job is to be relatable to you. Their job is, yes, to present the gospel in a non-threatening, non-scary way, but a loving, compassionate way. That's the gospel. That's Jesus. Love, compassion, kindness, gentleness. And so it's different every time I'm in this position. And it should be different because of the conversations that are had before walking up here. You should be able to go off of those cues of the people that are standing before you and trying to listen to what God might want you to say. Like, okay, yeah. And then it's your job to be obedient to what is around you in this moment, right? It's the same thing as like when I have this, and it's my own problem. It's whatever. It's a problem where it's like when someone hands me a piece of paper before a church service and say, here's what is happening. I'm like, okay. It's kind of an outline of what is probably going to happen. Like, don't sway from this. Isn't that taking away the option of maybe God doing something different? Like, throughout the service, because of conversations maybe the pastor had on the way into the stage. Things change. People change stuff. And I'm not saying like, feel like the Lord spoke to me this morning, I'm going to talk about something different. No, I'm not saying just because that person's not prepared, I'm saying it's like because of when you meet someone and you hear their heart, you're like, okay, cool. That's why I switch songs up so much. Like, they're like, could you send us the songs you're playing? I'm like, yep. It's probably going to change. Like, what? Like, I don't feel like it should be somewhere you're chained to this piece of paper. This is what is supposed to happen this morning, and if you sway off of this, you're going to be talked to afterwards. Okay, cool. We'll talk about it. That's great. But someone said something to me this morning that sent me down this, I have to talk about it. Last year, I went to Europe for the first time in like 5 years because of COVID and whatever. And I had 10 shows booked, and I had 2 days available that I was going to play on the street. I was going to be a busker. I was going to be a street performer with my guitar case open and see what happened, because I don't do days off. I'm not about it. That's why I'll drive 16 hours to a show, turn around and drive home. That's why today after service, I'm driving 16 hours home, right? Like, I don't want to waste time. I want to get home. I want to be with my family. And if I'm on the other side of the world and it's a day off, I want to do something that kind of maybe could help provide for my family. And so I had this idea, my plan. Keep in mind, this was my plan. I'm driving near Bremen, Germany. I'm heading to Denmark, and I see hundreds of people along this river. I'm like, whoa, that's where I got to be. I need to go there and play, right? That's a good opportunity to maybe earn some money, maybe talk about Jesus, maybe meet some people, whatever. So I park a long ways away from where that was because it was a packed city, and I paid a lot for parking. I go walking back. I've got my my backpack case right there thing. Brought my tripod to put it on time-lapse if something cool happened. And I have my idea of like what could be cool. I find the river, I find these hundreds of people, I walk down these stairs, I get down there and I realize it's a flea market. I'm like, it's broke people selling stuff to broke people. I'm like, I was in, I already paid for parking. I have to at least recoup my parking, right? So I go and I see this kiosk. It's a little pub kiosk, and it has these beautiful neon purple letters that says espresso. I'm like, that's mine. I'm doing it. I said, and if you buy something there, you can loiter, And so I'm like, hey, could I get an espresso? I'm like, yeah. I was like, is it okay if I play right here? I was like, yeah, great. So I sit on this bench in the sun. It's 100 degrees. Bad idea. With a steaming hot espresso. And I sit down, my guitar case is open, and I just start playing songs and playing songs and playing songs. And there's still lots of people walking back and forth, but they're just kind of like, hey, and they just keep going. Occasionally someone will drop a coin in my case and whatever. I played for an hour, so it's like 12, 13 songs. I cannot even swallow anymore. I'm just so parched. My espresso, I gave up on it halfway through. This is not good. And I'm like, I have to bail. I have to abandon, And so right before I was going to play this last song, I hear, I turn and look, and down this long, beautiful stone walkway, I see about 100 people. They're all wearing white flowy shirts, white shorts. They all have drinks in their hand, and one on each side is pushing a little white cart, I'm like, a walking street party. And they stop right here. Right in front of me. I'm on this bench. I'm about to play this last song and give up. And there's like, staring at me. I'm like, all right, I'm done. So I made €7, right? I'm like, this is awful. I needed like €12 to pay for parking. And so I take off back towards the car, and I'm like, there's got to be something else, And so I find this area under the trees, right? That would have been a good idea. It's like this pizza/pub place, and I could see a stage inside, but I saw this chair out front in the shade. And I walk up, I'm like, can I play here? He's like, yeah, inside or out? I'm like, right here is great. He said, perfect. I sit down, I open my guitar case, and I start playing. And here's the thing, normally when a musician wouldn't have a better time if people were turning towards him and acknowledging that he's there playing songs, he or she, whatever. It's I'm not saying it's just a guy. You want to play these songs and whatever. It's also important for that person playing songs to play songs that people can relate to, or maybe they've heard before. It's familiar to them, right? And so I'm playing, and there's probably 50, 60 people sitting there eating pizza, drinking. Most of them have their backs to me. There's some of them that are facing me because that's the side of the table they're on. They have no choice, right? And so I played Faithfully by Journey, and I had Whenever I'm Alone with You. Played some Cure. I was like, we both lie silently still in the dead of the night, right? Poison, Every Rose Has Its Thorn, all this stuff. I'm playing songs to try to relate to these people. And I get to this point where I'm like, you know what? There's no way this song is not one that every person in that space, I was like, Tommy used to work on the docks. Union's been on strike. He's down on his lucky stuff. So tough. I see these 10 guys walking up the sidewalk. One of them's pulling a little red wagon, right? They're like, it's weird, I know. They're walking up and they're all looking towards me with grins on their face. I'm like, okay, Gina is running away. She cries in the night, Tommy whispers, baby, it's okay. Someday they stop and one of the guys comes making a beeline towards me with an even bigger grin on his face. I'm like, what is happening right now? Like, said we gotta hold on to what we got. It doesn't make a difference if we make it or not. We got each other, and that's a lot for us. We'll give it a shot. The guy's standing right here. I'm immediately kind of annoyed because I'm like, who interrupts living on a prayer, right? And he says, Wonderwall by Oasis, do you know it? That's what I thought too. I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm sorry? He's like, Wonderwall by Oasis, do you know it? I'm like, Wonderwall by Oasis? I'm like, I've heard it like a lot. I've never played it. Is it great? Could you play it? And I'm telling him all these, I've never played it. He's like, great, maybe it'd be great because it's my friend's bachelor party, and it'd be so great to make a video and have it forever. That's a great sentiment. That's awesome. And I'm like, no, I understand. I was like, but I've never played the song before. And he has the lyrics pulled up. He's like, today. I'm like, no, I was trying to figure out how do I like cut this out? How do I axe this without hurting people's feelings, right? And he's like, okay, great. And he starts motioning for his buddies to pull their wagon over. And these guys are walking through, and now everyone's like, what's going on? Like, everyone's like interested now. And they come up and they make a half moon shape right in front of me with their wagon full of pretzels and beer, right? I'm like, this is so stereotypical Germany right now. And they're like, okay, great. And they had given a cell phone to one of the guys that had his back to me the whole time. They gave a cell phone to him. He's going to be the camera guy. And he's like, he has no idea what's happening either. And I'm like, Jesus, what am I going to do? Like, it's one of those legitimate, desperate, I don't want to be a YouTube video that people, like, look up and send to their friends like I do. I send stuff to people. I was like, man, I was like, today, he's like, yes, great. Gives a thumbs up, start recording. And I'm like, Jesus, please help me. I have no idea what I'm doing. Today is gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. And by now you should somehow realize what you gotta do. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. I don't know what's next. And he's looking at his lyrics, he says backbeat. I'm like, backbeat, the wood is on the street, that the fire in your heart is out. I know you've heard it all before, but you never really had it down. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. I said, I don't know. He said, maybe. He said, maybe you're gonna be the one that saves me. And after all, you're my wonderwall. I knew on the radio from when I was 15 it made a weird drum thing. I was like, but I had no idea. So I said, maybe you're gonna be the one that saves me. And after all, you're my wonderwall. I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, yes! What? I'm like, oh, what are you doing to me, right? One of the guys dropped a $20 euro in my case and all that. I'm like, that's crazy, what? Everybody in that courtyard was facing me because of a song that I had never learned or cared about before. They're all tuned in. They're all here, present. Those guys, they move right here between myself and the river. They circled their little red wagon. They're just standing there. And I immediately realized, as I always do, and you probably do when looking back, I'm like, I was trying to do everything according to what I wanted to do, my plan, what I thought would work on my day off, and me trying to make something happen. And so all of those people facing, I felt God tell me to do this. The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. My God will never fail. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. Turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. It for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. So those guys stood there for 7 songs. They were engaged. The people that were in that courtyard were engaged. And I played 7 worship songs. And I spoke briefly about the grace of Jesus. And God's plan is always better. I don't know why he doesn't let us in on it sooner. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's to just continue this lifelong lesson of patience and obedience and being desperate for him, because that's what he wants from us, is to be desperate for him. And if you think of the times in your life, and maybe it's right now, maybe right now you're like, man, things are going really good. Get ready. Because why wouldn't it take a nosedive if you feel like, I got this on my own? And the moment that you let any thought come into your mind or into your heart, like, yeah, totally, you're doing it right. Satan uses that little bitty crack, and he crams his foot through it, and he starts climbing into your heart, into your mind. Doubt, fear, uncertainty, it just washes all over you. And because you're a human being, because you are a broken, sinful, that's a terrible word in church, you're a sinful person. You're not perfect. And the grace of Jesus is for you. I need it every second of the day. The moment I look in a mirror in the morning, before I leave home, before I leave a hotel, before I, open my eyes and be scared to death by my alarm in a Walmart parking lot, sitting up, sleeping against the window in the van, I can look in the mirror and disqualify myself from being able to speak about the goodness of God every day, because I know me. And the moment that I think of the fact that God knows me, He allows me to be there in that Walmart parking lot in that other state about to go do whatever it is that I'm doing that day. He's like, hey, you need my grace today? I'll make sure you remember that. And I stand here before you now in need of a Savior, in need of His love, His kindness, His arms around me. And the thing is, there's not a one of you that isn't in the same spot. He loves you. He has a plan for your life, no matter who you are, no matter what you have done, have not done, the things that you may have not said correctly, the things that you haven't said at all. And He allows you to breathe. And this morning, I believe each of us is supposed to just take a deep breath and be like, okay, from this moment forward, I'll be surrendered. I'll be trusting. I'll try to chase after you. Please bring the right people into my path to encourage me, to walk alongside me, because that's what it's supposed to be. We have that whole phrase that everyone adopted during COVID, we're in this together. People forgot about that. Yeah, they bought into it for the first 5 months. I was all into it the first 5 months. I'm like, heck yeah, I need this. I have no job. I have no way of making money. I'm a musician that has to be traveling in front of people to earn money. And then it became this whole thing of once people could start like going into the world again and like going to work and not only working from home and being back in rooms like this, we let our guard down. Like, oh, cool, we're back to normal. No, we'll never be normal. We'll never be back to normal. I don't think we're supposed to be. I think maybe the way things are now is better than it was before because we were really comfortable. I have never once taken music for granted. I've never once taken the fact that I get to play music for granted. But I tell you this, sometimes it's really, really hard. And it's not only about, okay, you're in the middle of an 18-hour drive, you got 9 hours to go, and you're like, what am I doing? I just keep getting further and further away from home. And if you've ever driven, 18 hours is 3/4 of the way across this country. What are you doing? Two days ago, we played a live music festival in Ohio. And that day, I got there at 7 a.m. I was early. It was cool. We didn't have to load in until 9:30, right? We live in 4 different states, so that means we come from 4 different places to meet up to play a show, a festival, whatever it is. I got there at 7. One of our guitar players got there at 9. He came from southern Illinois to central Ohio. One of my guys flew in from Los Angeles to Columbus the night before because he was playing guitar at a church camp that his church was doing near LA. So he flew in to Columbus. Our drummer and his wife came from Massachusetts, not far from here, Pittsfield, Massachusetts. They came to Akron, Ohio area, and then Jared drove 2 hours down to pick up JR at the airport because his flight got in at like 2:30 a.m. because the world is crazy right now, especially with airplanes. Drove back up. So that was the night before. I'm at the festival hanging out with the production team. Eli rolls up. We're about to load all of our stuff like onto the stage in like 20 minutes. And I get a message from Jared saying, our car just died. We're on the side of the interstate. So that is our other guitar player, our drummer, and our drummer's wife on the side of the interstate. I'm like, okay, that's a bummer. So obviously I'm here. They're over an hour away. Also, cell phone service was really, really, really bad already. And then you had the cyber whatever that was happening. Everything was like the worst case scenario of like, are you serious right now? And so we started trying to figure out how to get them, send someone to pick them up, right? How do we, and then the festival, the higher ups were like, we'll move your set. We'll have someone else play earlier. We'll move. So they're like juggling everything. They're doing everything they can to accommodate us being able to play this show that we needed to play. Anyway, this guy named Terry goes up. He's picking up JR, Cass, Jared. They're on their way back an hour, right? At this point, we're pressed. And not only is JR needing to be back to play our show, but he also, the moment he gets off stage at our show, he has to go 3.5 hours west to play with the band Pillar that evening, right? It's like, yeah, they almost killed us. So all of these things needed to work. They needed to work. Anyway, they dropped JR off at the airport in Akron. They keep coming towards us. Oh, by the way, Jared's wife, who this is an anniversary trip for them, had to stay with the car because of the tow truck coming. So their anniversary trip was just shot to pieces, right? She's sitting by herself in a state she doesn't live in with a broken down car at a busy intersection standing there, right? I'm like, that's a bummer. She's so mad at all of us, right? So Jared is about to pull into the festival. He's like, where do I go? Whatever, all this stuff. And I get a message from JR saying there are no cars available. Even though he had a reservation, whatever. He's an hour north in Akron at an airport that cannot help him at all. I'm like, no way is this happening. So at that moment, he's not making our show. Even though they moved our set by an hour and a half, he can't make it. So then I'm like, I've got to figure out how to get him to the Pillar show. Again, no decent phone service, and Jesus worked it out, but it was the most stressful situation I've been in a long time because Pillar was playing without their actual guitar player. So JR was the only guitar player that was going to be there. They had to have him. We needed him, but he couldn't make it to ours, so we played as a three-piece. It went fine. The people were super kind to us. But when one thing got figured out, something else happened. All day long. And the kicker is, once someone was actually tracked down to go from the festival to Akron to pick him up and then drive him 3.5 hours away, hours later, we're checking in on JR, and he's like, I'm still 37 minutes from the show. Pillar had already moved doors by over an hour to accommodate JR getting there late. And he's like, this guy has driven 10 miles an hour under the speed limit the whole way. I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? And he made it. That's cool. That's fine. But I was severely like, for the first time in a very, very, very long time, I mean, I'm being completely honest with you, in the middle of all that stuff, of how hard it is to get our band together to play a show, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. Because it's been 3 months of flights getting canceled, flights being rerouted, people showing up way too late for us to play a show with them, me having to ask people to fill in on guitar the day of. 3 months of it. It's been really frustrating. And yesterday, to myself, but I'm telling you now, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to have to go through dealing with getting 4 guys from 4 different states to one space for a show. And maybe it's just I don't want to do one-offs anymore. Maybe that's it. Maybe I just want to do tours like we used to be able to do before COVID. I want to go out for 3 weeks at a time and be together and do this. But maybe there's something in your life, and maybe it's just this morning. Maybe you've had 3 months of just like get beat down. You have these moments of like, man, that was really cool. I'm so glad that worked out. But the next day, Like, wow, that's going to cost an extra $1,500 to do this one thing. Or if I don't do this, we don't get paid to do this, and therefore we're already out $1,500 in flights that are non-recoupable, non-refundable. What do I do? And maybe that's you today, and you're in this spot where you're like, man, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. The great news is the fact that Jesus knows. He has known from the beginning of time. He has you right here. He's asking you, hey, trust me. Trust me. I can take care of this. I can do anything. I created everything. And he needs you just to acknowledge that. Okay, God, I trust you. The same way, like every time I get behind the wheel to take off on some crazy drive, it could be my last drive on this side of heaven. And I trust that Jesus loves my family more than I ever could. And he's going to take care of them. I want to be there to grow really old with them. And I sure hope I am. But I know that because of the promise of Jesus, because of his love, his sacrifice, his grace, all these people that have become my favorite people over the past 28 years of being in a band on the road, I'm going to see them again. In paradise, in a place called heaven, where there'll be no more days where I'm trying to figure out how do we make this work. Jesus, what are you doing? Thank you for letting me be here today. I'm going to pray and we're going to be done. Because I don't believe I could say anything else that would matter other than Jesus Christ loves you. And he knows whatever you're feeling, whatever you're dealing with, your frustrations, your bitterness, your brokenness, the relationships that you just cannot get sorted out, the job that is you dread going every day. One of your children is a bit wayward. You don't know what to do. Jesus, we love you. We thank you that you give us life. We thank you for this place that we could come together and grow closer to you. Jesus, thank you so much for loving us. Thank you so much for being that comfort when we feel like there's no comfort. Thank you for making a way when we believe there is no way. And thank you that your promises are always kept. We ask you to please be with us. Help us chase after you. Put the right people in our paths every step of the way. We love you. Amen. Thank you guys very much.